Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Ranson Lee. Ranson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
For sure. So I like to start each conversation off, Ranson, by asking my guests the same couple questions. So the first question that I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Okay, so Flex Lewis, definitely going to be one of the top guys up there, for sure. Let's see, of all time. Big fan also of John Meadows as well. Has been a big influence on kind of my training and stuff over the years. Those are probably two of the biggest ones I would say that are my favorites.
Why Flex Lewis as one of your favorites?
He's just got a crazy physique, man. Everything about it, like this, his shape's amazing. He's just got such a dense, like hard look to him, like too, and just the fact that like he's, before he decided to go open, like it's obvious that he could make the switch at any time. He just looks huge, and it's just such a nice person too. Like I've met him before, back in I think like 2013 or something like that, and just a cool person to be around.
How do you? I'm really curious to your thoughts on this. How do you think he's going to do once he steps on that open Olympia stage?
Honestly, I'm not sure. It's going to be very interesting to see, because in years past, we've seen pictures of him, like weeks out, where he looks just massive and just shredded and hard anyway already, and has to suck down quite a bit to make 212. I think he's going to be someone that people aren't going to credit enough coming into the Olympia. I think people are like, oh yeah, he'll probably look good, but I think he'll end up being definitely top 5 for sure. And I think he'll end up surprising a lot of people by how he comes in.
100%. I agree. I really hope that he can get on stage this year, because I agree with you. I think he's going to be he's going to do some damage for sure, and he's going to catch some people napping. We'll say that, right? So, at what age did you start lifting weights, Ranson? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
Let's see, 2011, I would have been started at 20. I started lifting and getting into the gym after I stopped wrestling. Actually, I just needed something to kind of fill my time with the time that would have been taken up by practices, and just started getting the gym and lifting, and loved it. And ever since I've been in the gym with bodybuilding and powerlifting, either one. So.
Very cool. So I like to use that question to kind of transition into a little bit more of your upbringing. So talk to me about where you grew up, talk about, siblings, family dynamics, sports that you played, anything else that maybe shaped that childhood up to about high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Yeah. So I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, right outside, actually, in a small town of Mint Hill. Have 2 older sisters. And so that's kind of my family background with that. 2 older sisters. We've all been fairly active through our whole life. I played basketball for like 7 years when I was younger, through middle school, then started to run track. Did a few years of that. And when I got in high school, I got into wrestling. Wrestled all through high school, and then a couple years of college. With that, so ended up, I think I wrestled at 141 pounds my last year of college in 2011, before getting into the whole lifting scene.
So talk to me about your parents. Did you have a good relationship with them? What did they kind of instill in you when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, parents have always been great, man. They've been very supportive of everything I've wanted to do. my entire life for the most part. They've been very, instilled a very good work ethic on me, um, as well as like my grandparents did as well. We grew up right next to my grandparents on my dad's side. We had about with this, so I'd on the weekends be doing like building projects with my grandfather, and my dad, and hard work was just kind of instilled, and um, you just kind of you have to work for what you want type of thing, and they were always supportive with practices and pushed me to do things, and the main thing was if you sign up to do something, you finish it. If you don't want to do it after that, whatever. But if you say you're going to do something, go forth and do it, finish it out, and whether you like it or not, if you say you're gonna go for it, go for it.
Cool. So talk to me a little bit about wrestling. I mean, most people when they start a sport, they start at a really young age. You kind of got into it a little bit later. Why is that? And then what did you appreciate and enjoy about wrestling?
So in North Carolina, it's not a huge state as far as wrestling is concerned. It's not like in the Midwest, so, out in Iowa and everywhere out there where you grow up wrestling from a very early age, and you see people, just tournaments with kids that are like in elementary school. That doesn't happen much out here. There's some of it in like small clubs, but you pretty much either have to have a family that's already has a wrestling background, um, or know a bunch of people that do wrestle to even know that's really out there, essentially. So here in North Carolina, it's mainly you start wrestling in high school for the most part. So that's where it was introduced to me, was high school. Decided to give it a shot just because just sounded interesting to do, and like I wasn't very, I didn't play basketball anymore. I wasn't fast enough at the high school level to keep doing track. So it sounded good. So decided to do that and loved it. I like that it was individual as much as it was team. And for me, just because, you have your individual part where, it's just you out there against one other opponent. And I think that's one thing that appealed to me the most, because your win was determined by you, not a bunch of other people. You didn't have to rely on them. But at the same time, your team relied on you to win, to be able to, for the team to take win as well. So that part I liked a lot. And just the discipline of it was something that, I liked quite a bit. The coach I had in high school was phenomenal. I look at that man to this day. Um, he was the best coach of any sport I ever played. Um, and still have a good relationship with him. He has probably one of the biggest impacts on my life besides my family, quite honestly. Um, Coach I had in like college, not so much, not that great, but the coach I had in high school, he helped turn me into the person I am today, I would say.
So talk to me a little bit more about that. Expound on that. Why did he have such a profound and big impact in your life at that age?
I think it's because he was able to see the potential that most of us had. Um, and he was able to find ways to bring that out in all of us. Some coaches stick to one style of coaching, and they're either, super hard on their athletes, and that's it. That's all you get from them. And they're very one-sided. He had times where he was very strict on every single one of us. Uh, but there were very times he could be very understanding and kind of, listen to everybody and what's going on. He knew about your life outside of practice and stuff. Um, hey, sweetheart. Sorry, my daughter just walked in.
All good.
You want to sit up here for a second? Okay, you can sit up here for a second and talk. Um, but he had the ability to kind of bring out the best of everybody and push you as well. And he knew how to push each person individually. which was something that to me was very interesting. And I like, it is something that, he could bring out the best of every one of you, but also make you feel like an absolute piece of shit if you weren't giving it your all and you weren't trying. And he just taught me a lot about myself and how to kind of just handle life in general.
Very cool. So once you were kind of finishing up high school, what were you wanting to do outside of going to college and wrestling in terms of like a career? Did you kind of have an idea, or were you just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, going to go to college and wrestle?
I had no idea what to do. None. I had thought about going into the military. I thought about, trying to find a school to wrestle at. I was not very motivated at all with school in high school. I didn't care. Honestly, I did the very bare minimum to get by. My grades were terrible. Um, at one point I was lucky to even get out of high school, on time. So I school is something that it never it seemed very important to me when I was, in school, and I had a very hard time like doing homework for the most part, and that's the main reason I always got bad grades. Just not really because of testing, but just because I had never felt like doing homework. There's always other stuff that I wanted to be doing instead of that. So my grades were never the best. So getting into schools was a bit difficult. So once I graduated, I didn't have any set plan at that moment. It was just kind of, well, I guess I'll keep applying to some other places, see what happens. And I was at a wrestling camp that summer after high school, and just ended up applying, like putting an application at that school. Then talking with coach, and just end up essentially just getting on right then and getting up like a partial scholarship to come on. And actually, funnily enough, like when I got back from the camp, I got a call from the Citadel, which I had applied to like a while before, and they were like, "Hey, just wondering, what your decision is." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Seeing if you got your acceptance pack and all this." Is like, "I haven't got anything." And literally, when I got home from that trip, there was the acceptance packets and everything that they had sent for the Citadel, but I'd already signed with this school, and it had just gotten to me late, so I could have gone to the Citadel for a while, but yeah, I think it probably ended up being a little bit better for me that I did it in the long run. But yeah, so ended up getting in that school and just going to wrestle. Didn't have a plan at the time at all still of what I wanted to study at all. It was just mainly trying to knock out general education requirements to figure something else out.
So when did you, or did you ever during college figure things out, and what did that kind of look like, Ranson?
No, no, I still don't have things figured out, honestly. Um, after I did 2 years at that college, and just kind of had it with the coach and just kind of the situation with wrestling there was pretty frustrating with things. There was one tournament specifically, like after Christmas, that I'd gained a good bit of weight on Christmas break, and had to cut a lot of weight to make weight for the tournament we were going to. It was like 16 pounds in a week I had to cut, and which for me then was a lot of weight because I was wrestling at 140, so I was like 150, 154, 155 coming back from break, and that's a lot of weight to cut in a week. Uh, so that's a very dangerous zone thing, especially the way I did it. Ended up making weight, but by the time we got to the tournament, my coach was like, "Well, you were pretty sluggish wrestling, during the week of practice, so you're not gonna wrestle this weekend." So after that, I was like, no, "I'm done. I'm not going to essentially kill myself trying to make weight to not be wrestled. This is just bullshit." So after that's when I started to kind of get into the gym and lifting and starting to train and just picking up muscular development magazines and flex magazines and stuff, and looking through those, and just always thought that was cool. And I was like, and just had thought of, oh, I'd like to be big like that one day. Nothing really other than that. Just kind of enjoyed lifting and training. So kind of just went that route with it. But schooling, never really figured that out. Transferred to a different school. Was working quite a bit once I did that, and just with the point of um, you know going to the gym and stuff, and the amount I was working, didn't really have time or even still the motivation to do anything school wise, because I had no clue what I wanted to do still. So for me, it was just like, all right, it's kind of pointless for me to go to school right now since I have no clue what I'm going to do. It's just wasting money. So I just started working full time instead. And then, did that for a few years and went back for a little stint for some further education, but still just never fully completed anything.
So let's talk about then when you started taking strength training, lifting weights seriously at 20. Is it fair to say, like, once you really started lifting weights, that kind of gave you some meaning and purpose for life and a little bit of direction, or not really?
I would say so. Yeah.
So talk about that. Let's just talk about kind of like why did you, we already know why you started lifting weights, but what was it that kind of kept you going back to the gym and kind of pulling you back to the strength training?
Honestly, man, it was just the feeling I had the gym of just like every workout just improving and getting stronger and actually seeing the results, week after week. Whether it be, I got, an extra like 2 reps on an exercise, or I was able to add 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever to another exercise. Like that constant progression there is just what always kept me coming me back to it. And it was just a challenge type thing for me. And I think, kind of the same thing with wrestling is like in your head, it's mentality of, okay, I can do better. I did this, let's try and beat it. And just every week of, all right, I did this last week. Let's see if I can do, this many more this week. And when you keep doing that and it keeps going, like it's almost addicting a little bit. And that's just that especially drove me for the first like few years of keeping doing it. And I lived for just going to the gym and just trying to do more than I did the last week.
Very cool. So how did you kind of learn how to lift weights? Was it just the magazine stuff, just watching other people in the gym? And then when you kind of started out, what was it? Was it kind of more like powerlifting type stuff, just trying to see how much you could bench, or what was it specifically?
So when I started out, it was mainly just um, watching videos online on like YouTube, um, and just magazines, like the Muscular Development magazines, the Flex magazines, before they died off really with the whole internet. That was what I looked at for, how to lift and everything else, and just kind of watching some other people in the gym. But everything I did was more bodybuilding based. I never cared about how strong I was, how much I could bench or squat or anything else. That didn't matter to me. I just wanted to try and build muscle and get bigger. As a kid, I always had, action figures and, watch superhero movies. And that was just, it, I always loved the look of like superheroes and stuff. And it was like, oh, that'd be cool. And then once I picked up, my first like Muscular Development magazine, it was like, oh, wow, people can actually do this. I was like, I would love to do that. And it's kind of continued. It's just continued on from there, really.
Yeah, cool. No, that's super cool, man. I can definitely relate, and I think probably a lot of people listening can relate to that. So just talk a little bit about the evolution of your training then. When did you start competing? I know that you got into powerlifting, so why don't you just unpack all of that for us, Ranson, please?
Yeah, so 2011, it was like March of 2011 is when I started getting to the gym. And it was probably, I don't know, like midsummer, July or so. I was just in the gym one day, and one of the trainers was just came up to me, and who we were friends with, and he was like, "You ever think about competing?" And I was like, well, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, you never thought about like doing like a bodybuilder show or something?" And I never really thought about it, at that point. I just thought it's cool to, be big. And a couple people talked me into just doing one. It's this small little like natural show that was, I think there was only like 4 people who did like the bodybuilding, and it was super small. But I did that as my first one. It was like August of that year, and won that. And then after that, I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm gonna see, what I can do, keep doing with this. And so the next year in the spring, I did my first like NPC show and just got absolutely embarrassed completely. Just like no clue what I was doing, really still. A few weeks later, did another one and had improved a little bit from the previous showing. And I had people, at the show. So some of the coaches and stuff were there, like, oh, you have some, decent, pretty good potential for this, and I just love doing it. So I just kept on track doing it, and over the next couple years, would really from then on just do like one show a year. And every year was like, all right, well, I was like taking second like every year. I like these regional shows. It's mainly just because I wasn't very proportionate. My legs were bigger than my upper body was, and I was just working on that and trying to be leaner. And I was my own coach. I did, for the all that time I was doing my own training, my own diet, just trying to figure things out myself. And it wasn't until I want to say 2014 that I decided to try and work with a coach. And I had some residual income to be able to afford one. So I ended up hiring a coach a few weeks out of a competition in October, and then continued with him for an entire off season the next year in 2015. We just tried to grow and put on size. And 2016, competed twice that year. Did the Charlotte Europa and won that, and then I did the Nationals in 2016 as light heavyweight, and didn't really get the didn't end up looking how I wanted to quite there. Changed a lot in the last like 24 hours. Dropped a lot of water weight to make weight like the morning of weigh-ins, and couldn't really replicate how I looked there to on stage, which happens sometimes. But that was really my first like time really going at it for a big national show. But things didn't end up exactly how I wanted to, and I was going to try and take another extended off season to just get bigger and make improvements where they needed to be. So I think it was maybe February of 2017. I saw a flyer for a local powerlifting meet, and I was like, okay, well, this could be something different to kind of change training up a little bit and pack on some more like maybe dense tissue and get it help that look a little bit. So from there, I started training for that powerlifting meet, and ended up doing way better than I even thought I would do for it, and putting up numbers that I didn't think I would end up being able to put up. Ended up totaling, I think, like around 1756 or something at I think I weighed in at like 215. So I was competed at the 220 class there. And a lot of people were like, oh yeah, how many meets have you done? I'm like, well, it's my first one. And kind of like everyone was really surprised at that. So it kind of made me think, all right, maybe I'm a lot better at this than I thought. So just continued on that path. And later that year in October, I ended up totaling like somewhere in the 1800s. I don't remember what it was. And it was a guy at that meet told me, hey, you need to stop doing these small level meets. You need to start. And I asked him, I was like, well, why is that? And he's like, because you're right now ranked number like 15 in the world. And I didn't quite realize that. Hey, baby, you got a cookie? All right. So, kept doing that again. And the next spring, I ended up, hitting a bigger total still. And got to the point where I ended up being invited to some of the big money meets out there, and got to the point where 2019 was the best year I had with powerlifting. I ended up hitting a total of 2133 at 220. And, that put me behind, still has me at number 5 in the world at 220 in reps. I squatted 848, benched 518, deadlifted 766 there. And so, during that time, there was always a part of me that wanted to come back to bodybuilding, but things never were quite working out to line up with that, essentially. And, I was just, it's at a point where I was knocking the door of coming close to, hey, I'm in the realm of world record squat and, possibly world record total. So I'm going to just keep going with this. And 2020, we moved out actually to Vancouver, Washington for a bit to train and be part of a gym out there, Generation Strength, with some friends of mine. And I was getting ready for the current US Open, which had been previously canceled that spring due to COVID and rescheduled for November, and was getting ready for that. And I was going to try and cut down, to 198 actually for that one, to really try and break some records. I know. I feel now. And during the process of that, the current got canceled again. So I was looking for another meet to do. Found another one around that same time in November. And this was actually the first weekend of September. I had gotten down to like 210 pounds. Strength was still high with everything. And then on my second squat, rep on my squat, I was only squatting 575. So for me, nothing crazy heavy. But it was my last sleeve squat of that prep. Blew out my adductor and in the hole. And a month later, had that surgically repaired. So started trying to rehab back and come back to compete again in April this year. And ended up doing the current again also. Pushed things a little bit too hard to get back to it. And still ended up squatting in the 8s in training. Hit 815 a couple times. The meet didn't go very well that day, but being the first meet back, I still totaled over 2,000 with, coming back after that first injury. That's the only actual injury I've really had. But, it was a very big mental barrier to overcome, especially get back under the bar with squatting, especially. That was every single week, trying to convince myself not to be scared of the weight was pretty tough. And then after the meet, I was just beat up, felt like crap. I was tired of my joints hurting, my knees hurt, my hips hurt all the time. My elbows were hurting, constantly having tendonitis from low bar squatting and the position that puts you in as far as, externally rotating the shoulder. And I've been talking about, to my wife about trying to come back to bodybuilding, and finally one day she was like, "Why don't you just do it? Just, go for it. Why not? If you want to do it, now's the time." So this is probably around early May, and I kind of kicked the idea around, started just trying to train in more of a bodybuilding style again, and then reached out to a friend of mine who, I contemplated reaching out to him for coaching in the past and stuff before, and we had talked about it, and he's like, I've always told you could be a lot better than you are, which he did. And he used to kind of make me mad, but looking back, he never bullshitted me, but he was always telling the truth of, hey, you got a lot more potential. So hired him, and then end of June this year, we started working together to in goal prep for nationals.
So I want to, before we kind of get into this prep up to nationals in 2021, I want to touch on a little bit of the powerlifting stuff. So to have 815 pounds on your back for a squat and actually, squat that, for you, where's your mindset at? Where do you take your mind? What do you focus on? Walk us through that a little bit, because obviously there's not very many of us that will ever attempt that or be able to complete a movement like that. So what's the mindset like that for that, Ranson?
So that mindset changed quite a bit from when I started powerlifting to this year. When I started powerlifting, I would try and get like super hyped up. I would have like certain music on like every session and get really into it and sniffing ammonia, everything. Like have people slap me, all this crazy shit to really get me amped up and just like really letting like anger out and everything else. Um, but the further along in my powerlifting career I got, like especially with squat, I learned the calmer I stayed, the better my squat went. Because squat, honestly, is the most technical out of all the three lifts. It's the one that more can go wrong with a lot faster. Especially when you have a weight as heavy as I've had on my back before. So the main thing was just the keeping calm and just it's focusing on engaging everything. And it's kind of weird because you get under the bar like that, and as soon as you interact the weight, like it feels heavy, but you don't really see anything else around you. It's just everything else immediately just gets like blocked out. You just have like tunnel vision, and it's a lot of times you don't like. It's weird to kind of describe you. It's almost like you like once you do the rep, it's like okay to actually just do that. Especially the heavier it gets, sometimes you end up starting to kind of black out during the rep with squats. Which I have done um, at the top end at a competition before. But it's weird. It's sometimes you think it would feel a lot harder than it is, but usually the squat itself isn't like super hard. But it's just like mentally in your head, you already have to have gone through it in your head that you've done it and that you're gonna move it. Because as soon as you unrack it, if you have any doubt at all, like any, you're not gonna get the lift. That's the biggest thing with powerlifting is you once you unrack it, you have to be 100% confident before you even do that it's going up, no matter what. Because any question in your mind, you already lost the lift. Um, so it's a bit different mindset than with bodybuilding training for sure. Um, because you're going in to hit like one specific number, every single workout, and it's all planned out specifically to be able to hit the maximal number on meet day. And which sometimes you have an idea of, sometimes you don't, depending on if you're coaching yourself or you have a coach. Um, and but it can be scary a lot of times, especially if you know it's a weight you haven't hit before. So like for me personally, if it's a weight that it was heavier than I've ever hit before, I didn't want to know what was on the bar. I would just have people load it and not tell me, and just go in there and squat it. Because a lot of times too, if you know the weight that's on the bar and you haven't done it before, that gets in your head, and then again, that can end up leading to not complete lift at all. So for me, I'd like to just not know what's on the bar at all, just load it up, and whatever's on the bar, I'll squat, and then tell me right after, because then it's really exciting when you hit a squat and like you're like, all right, how much is that? And then like you get told, and you're like, it's heavier than you've ever done before. The first time I hit before record breakers, I hit 821 in training that leading up to that, and I had hit 804 in a competition that summer, and like I knew that the weight on the bar for that training session was going to be heavier than 804, but I had no idea what. And just knowing it was going to be heavier than that, I was like, all right, I don't want to know. But as soon as it came off, and I was like, yeah, they're like 821, and it was just it's such a cool feeling because just I never in my head like thought I'd be squatting that much weight to begin with when I started powerlifting, and to be getting that close to numbers that are like close to world record territory is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So what was your favorite thing about powerlifting? And then what was your least favorite thing about powerlifting?
I mean, my favorite thing was just like some of the lifts I did, just the pure strength and like that you're putting up numbers wise. Like it's just cool to lift some like super heavy weights. Um, that was my favorite part of it, was just seeing that progression happen. The least favorite part though was just like the tweaks and stuff that would just constantly happen to your body, and just being sore and having to stay so much more on top of like body work and everything. Because usually the heavier you're squatting, and the more you're going to end up having elbow tendonitis and other things that end up affecting like your bench. Like I've had preps for meets where once I started low bar squatting, I could hardly bench after that, just because the way the placement of the bar on your back, it leads to um, having to, most of us have poor external rotation of the shoulder anyway, and having a low bar position that's forcing you to externally rotate even more, ends up screwing up other areas down the line on your arm. And then you have elbow tendonitis that flares up to where it hurts to even bench 135. And when you're someone who benches 500 pounds in competition, that's can be very frustrating and tough mentally to go to a session knowing you're supposed to do like doubles at 465, and you rack 135, and then it's already excruciating to try and do. So that's probably the worst part of it, was just a lot of times close to a meet just being in pain and just having to deal with it. Um, and which with bodybuilding, it's not quite the same, and you're not really in pain with your joints and stuff as much, or really hardly ever, that I've had issues with.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Is there last question kind of about powerlifting, then we'll finish up with the bodybuilding stuff here, but comparing powerlifting and bodybuilding, is there some correlation? Obviously with the training, I understand that, but like from your perspective, maybe when you did bodybuilding and then you got into powerlifting, now you're back into bodybuilding, is there maybe some correlation or some similarities in terms of things that you learned about powerlifting and bodybuilding now that you've done both, that maybe you didn't know there was that correlation previously?
I think they both complement each other fairly well. I think there's a lot of bodybuilders that could probably benefit from doing some more powerlifting type training, even if it's just like a short stint of it. Because there's a lot of people could end up being a lot stronger than they think. But I think for me, powerlifting made me focus on technique a lot. With bodybuilding, there's a lot of people moving some pretty good weight out there, but their form's horrendous. And after the years of powerlifting, me seeing some of it now, it's just like it kind of hurts me to even watch how some of these people are doing some of their movements, because it's not efficient, and you can tell that like it doesn't feel good to them while they're doing it. And just like for me, I'm sitting there looking at it and going, okay, you could literally just change your positioning just a little bit and it would fly up. And it'd be way easier for you. Your power output would be way higher. You'd be able to put more weight on the bar. Um, so going back into bodybuilding now, it's like, okay, all that technique stuff I've learned, I think is helped me quite a bit with that. Um, and then hmm, that's probably the main thing that I've seen as far as crossover wise, between the two. Powerlifting, most powerlifters don't have a good diet at all. I was one of them who, when I was powerlifting, I was eating so crappy, just packs of cookies every single day, not caring what I ate, just as long as it's food, doesn't matter. And I think that's one thing a lot of powerlifters need to start probably doing better, is dialing in nutrition, because it does play such vital of a role, with recovery and in performance, and everything else. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So let's get back into this prep. From just kind of looking at your Instagram, you did a show this year, and then that must have requalified you for nationals. Then you just competed in nationals last weekend. So talk about that first competition, and then let's get into nationals talk, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was just to qualify. There was no plan to come in like super lean or anything for it. It was just qualify for the show. If you end up winning it, cool, whatever. It's just to qualify. Um, But at the time, that was probably one of the best looks I've ever had so far. We didn't do anything crazy for it. It was super minimal the whole way. Um, didn't really have any diet changes at all up to that point. And then after that, we kind of pushed on the gas a little bit more, started doing a little more cardio and everything else. Diet really still didn't change. Um, Body just started getting leaner and just responding more, and uh, it got to the point where I had to actually start doing a couple refeed days from then to nationals, because I was actually getting the point where, for the first time, I was actually hitting the point where it's actually flat. I thought I knew what that meant before in the past, but I'd never really known until this prep getting ready for nationals, where there's days like I would go in the gym, I was like, I am moving this weight, but my muscles completely deflated, completely. I'm getting zero pump, like nothing's happening, and it's just and just super tired, and even though like it was, energy wise and stuff was tough the past few weeks of it, like it still wasn't that hard of a prep. I think we could have probably pushed things quite a bit further, but just getting back into bodybuilding again and everything, we took things pretty mild as far as everything goes. Um, just mainly to kind of see, where we ended up at, with hopes of winning, of course, and that was the main goal. But looking at nationals and how that went, that we have a good idea of what needs to be done to improve and get to the point where I am there, and to where it's, I'm fighting for that top spot, and it will be hard to deny that I'm there for that top spot.
So talk to me a little bit about the nuts and bolts. How much cardio between your first competition into nationals did you get up to? And what is kind of like your within prep? What is kind of like your training style, or how do you kind of approach that as prep goes on?
So up till the first show, like the main thing was just like we weren't doing any set cardio. It was just mainly try and get 10,000 steps in a day, and it was like that at first going into nationals as well. I had started a new job a week before my qualifier show. Um, Before then, I was just doing powerlifting coaching, and we had moved back. We'd moved from Washington to North Carolina 2 weeks before my qualifier. Actually, we drove all the way back here and started the new job the week of the qualifier show. So with working a new job and everything, I didn't have time to really get 10,000 steps in fully a day. So that's when I actually had to start implementing, actually doing cardio. So I was doing like 35 minutes in the morning, and then I would just finish out the day, end of the day, at like trying to get like 4,000 more steps in, and that's what we were doing at first. And then it just started getting super cold at night, and that's when I just started doing, just cardio on a machine, either a treadmill or the step mill, and would do 30 minutes again at night, and then started bumping up the step mill in the morning a little bit, closer to the show, and then same thing with the secondary cardio. Uh, I think I got up to where I was just maybe at like 40 minutes on the step mill and like 35 minutes on like a treadmill or bike or something at night. Is really what we got it up to, and that's about all we were doing with that. Training wise, um, I've kind of always followed the way John Meadows did programming, and some of his different programs with bodybuilding. So I kept that up pretty much the whole time. The only thing that really changed was just, the last few weeks of prep was just trying to just manage my fatigue and energy levels. That was kind of a hard thing. It did take around like 4.5 weeks out. It definitely took a dive. 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks out, like my energy would just die off to where I'd be in the gym, and the first exercise, I'd usually be pretty good for energy and output. And then after that, it would slowly decrease, and I would have to end up backing off quite a bit. And just realizing that when I go to the gym every day, it's like, all right, well, we'll do what we can do. And then, once you kind of hit that wall, start to back off and rest for the next day, which was new to me because I've never been to the point of being that depleted and exhausted where I've really had to do that. So that was different. That was different this time.
So talk to me a little bit, Ranson, about having a coach this go around, because when you did things previously, you kind of started on your own. I think your first nationals, you had a coach there for a little bit, but talk to me about the coach that you currently have and how did he kind of maybe change things for you in terms of what you did previously?
So my coach Cornelius, he's been great. You know, the whole time with him, I think the main thing working with him is just him being a good sounding board of, when I feel a certain way, communicating that, and him just, having an exact answer of, nope, just keep sticking to what you're doing. This is time for it to suck. Or, if I had a suggestion, he would, there'd be times where like, well, that's actually not a bad idea. Go with this. And just days I would look like crap and, send him pictures like, oh no, you're actually on the right track right now. And just having someone else, outside perspective that's looking at you, objectively, and because that's very hard to do yourself with bodybuilding. So I think so. Trying to coach yourself with that can be very difficult because there's a lot of days you wake up and be like, all right, I look really good. Have like a meal or two and look at yourself and you're like, I don't know what happened. I look terrible. And a lot of times that's just getting in your own head. And having someone else there to just kind of sit there and go, nope, you're on the right track. Just keep doing what you're doing. Stick to the plan. Everything's going to work. Um, is That's probably the best thing with working with him. Even with all the things that had happened, stress wise, they're uncontrollable for me. Like outside of training and everything that just have popped up this entire prep. And just him being there, like, well, you can't really control it. Just do what you can. This is what you control. You can control what you eat. You control your training. You control your cardio. Everything else will work itself out. Just keep doing what you're doing. And it's because I had a lot of stuff come up like the last like few weeks that just like one thing after another. I had my clutch go out on the way to travel out of town for work, and had ended up getting a rental car like last minute, getting into the place I was staying like 3 hours away, and was in a hotel room for work at like 4 weeks out from nationals, with my rice cooker and everything else, fixing food in the hotel room every day to try and make sure I stayed on meals while having a fridge in the hotel room that didn't work. The fridge in the hotel room ended up going out on me, not working. Um, Ended up getting actually sick the week before nationals, to the point of where I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to keep going because how I felt, and it took a good like 3 or 4 days to start feeling better, at all with that. And I was worried that would end up pulling me out. Um, and even him, like he'd had some family stuff come up like last minute to where he was not able to make it down to nationals, but he was very good at still keeping tabs with me, checking in every few hours, uh, giving me feedback on pictures and everything, changing things on the fly as we needed to while we were down there, to try and bring the best look possible that we could.
Excellent. So you touched lightly on nationals, but talk a little bit more. I believe there was 44 guys in the heavyweight class that you competed in, correct?
Yeah,
And then you placed eighth.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you talk about just kind of show date, walk us through pre-judging. How did you feel once you stepped off the pre-judging stage? Talk about finals, talk about kind of your overall thoughts and takeaways from this nationals. And then I want you to talk about what you're focused on going forward in terms of bodybuilding.
Yeah. So I woke up that morning feeling really very confident about myself, how I looked. Um, I think that morning I was down to like 212 when I weighed myself on the scale that morning. So that was the lightest we had been the entire prep at all. Um, so I was very confident as how I looked and how I felt. And getting closer to prejudging, still felt pretty confident stuff, but still felt kind of flat. honestly, I woke up feeling like pretty kind of flat as well. Um, but with pumping up and in the back, and I was like, well, I didn't feel like I was filling out quite like I needed to. But then sometimes it's better to be a little bit flat than spilling over and super full. So still felt good about it. When I was called out for the first call out, I was stoked, honestly. Just knowing the lineup of everyone, I was like, me and my coach had talked about it previously before going on stage. Of anyone who's in the first call out, like you're you're doing good with the caliber of everyone who's there, and it being such a huge class, as there hasn't been a heavyweight class that big in a very long time, especially one that's that deep of a lineup. So I was very happy with it. Just being in that first call out. As call out went on, and wasn't really moved around like I thought I would probably be. Yeah, a little bit disappointed coming off stage from that, and knew I was probably somewhere between like fifth and eighth, with the way it was. So I was pretty disappointed. But a lot of people, friends that I had there, and just my coach and just other people also were like, you shouldn't be disappointed with how you look. I actually had one of the other guys who's in the top callouts. He's actually ended up being one of the top five. He was talking to me after he came off stage. He's like, dude, your shape's awesome. He's like, for one, he's like, because he could tell I was kind of disappointed. He was like, you shouldn't be disappointed with the art. He's like, there's guys who have been, top five for the past few years. They're in the third call outs right now. He's like, man, this is tough for anyone to be in this first call out. Like, you should be super happy. So that took a little bit to kind of, process in my head, of course, but just kept kind of eating a little bit through the day. We actually started to, like, I had a burger and some fries after prejudging and fill it out a bit more, and actually ended up drinking a bit more fluid than my coach had wanted me to. And I felt better that way, and it kind of just communicated some more stuff to him. And we just decided to say, all right, screw it, let's do a little experiment and try some more just dirty food and see if it helps me feel out. And I ended up getting fuller and drier just through that. So um, I think one thing of working with him, with this the first real time of really trying to come in, peaked, um, figuring out what works best for my body, for that, that's one thing I think, after prejudging and going closer to finals, of just throwing in some more dirty food. My body responded very well to that, and just kind of learning, okay, this is what may be better for next time. Just kind of making some notes there, get to finals, and of course find out that I'm not type 5, backstage, which, yeah, a little bummed. But again, at that point, I was already in the head of, hey, your first call out, your first time back in a, nationals, you took 4 whole years off of bodybuilding, not trying to gain any size, any tissue. And you've only been back at this for 6 months. You should be pretty proud of yourself. So that's kind of where my headspace was then. And just came off stage, just ready to try and make a plan for going forward. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, you're even just during this entire prep, just like asking, when are you coming back to powerlifting, or are you going to be continuing with powerlifting, or are you going to do some more bodybuilding? What's your plans? And I don't probably will not be doing anything powerlifting related for a while, or at least until I accomplish what I want to with bodybuilding. It's been my main goal and dream since I started with it to become pro. So, when I started 10 years ago, and that's what we're gonna shoot for. So we're gonna go to just trying to get bigger and gain some more size in my upper body, because I got a lot of room to grow still. To fill out the heavyweight class. A lot of these guys are coming down from 250s, 260s to make heavyweights from their off season. I I think the heaviest I was, or I really have been, is like 235, and as soon as I started with my coach, like a lot of that was just like water weight I was holding. I've held around like 220 like the entire prep from June all the way through nationals. I was right around like the 220 mark. So kind of grew into the show and got leaner.
but I haven't pushed to try and grow at all since 2015. So we know we can probably easily now put some size on, because it's been years since I've actually tried to grow at all. Right now, especially, I'm in a perfect spot for my body to respond. So we're, kind of a game plan of trying to add 10 more pounds to my upper body and fill my upper body out to, more match my leg stage.
So are you going to be competing in 2022, or are you going to plan on taking that entire year off, or is that still just kind of play it by ear?
Playing it by ear. If I do compete in 2022, it'll be probably in the later part of the year. It'd probably be like nationals again, if I did. But that's just going to depend on if I think, we've made the improvements and add the size to really come in how I want to be. I know I need to just be bigger all over in my upper body, especially like my shoulders and my back. So we'll see. It's possible that I'll compete in 2022. I would say right now it's most likely that it will be 2023 instead. But you never know. It could, progress fairly well with an off season of, actually adding calories and pushing, that, I haven't done in many years to make enough progress to compete next year and place well.
Excellent. So the ultimate goal then is to earn your IFBB Pro card.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man. So we're gonna wrap it up here. I want to touch on a couple more things, Ranson, and then we'll finish up our conversation. So I want to ask you something that you kind of talked about when you transitioned from bodybuilding into powerlifting. You were like, maybe this will be, put some tissue on me and kind of help me gain some mass. Do you feel like those years in powerlifting did kind of help maybe change your physique or add some sort of uniqueness or density to your physique that you wouldn't have been able to add without the powerlifting, or not?
I think it definitely has added some density to areas, my legs and back especially. I think those areas it definitely helped. My upper back's definitely a lot more dense than it was. I don't know if it really helped add any kind of size at all, but the look to my muscles is quite a bit different. So there will be some times where I'll be incorporating some more powerlifting stuff while training the next year or whatever. One goal I do have next year is I won't really be doing any kind of full powerlifting meet, but one goal I do have for next year is just to do an 800-pound deadlift. So tentatively I'll probably be doing going for that at a local meet here the 1st of May. But that's one thing I have is I don't really care about squatting heavy right now. That I have no desire really to throw wraps on and put 800 plus pounds on my back, or bench super heavy again right now. But deadlift is always fun, and hitting an 800 is something that I was on track to do earlier this year, and it just didn't end up happening. Hit 775 in the gym a few weeks out from my competition. But hitting an 800-pound deadlift should be fairly feasible to do. So that's one thing I will probably end up doing, and just continuing a little bit more. Probably I would say, I took training a little leading into this competition. I took training a little more on the cautious side, just because of things that I've had going on, with my adductor and groin that have kept me from pushing super hard still. I've actually still had to kind of get it looked at again to, maybe have another little minor surgery to get some stuff fixed to where I can actually push legs and everything hard like I want to, without causing any more issues. Just I've taken things a little cautious, but this next off season I'll be ready to just kind of push harder and be a little more aggressive with the weights and everything that I'm using.
Very cool, man. So I asked you kind of in the beginning, the first question some of your favorite bodybuilders of all time. Are there any athletes on the current IFBB circuit that you really admire, you look up to them, or just think their physiques are pretty legit?
I mean, Nick Walker's physique's insane. That dude looks crazy. I don't know if I'd ever want to quite look like him, but just I have immense respect for what that dude has done the past few years. Like the way that guy's grown and just his condition, everything else is phenomenal. Really cool. I like the look of Hunter Labrada quite a bit and how he looks. She's fine. She's fine. Let's see, I'm trying to think of other bodybuilders like currently that are competing. The Brazilian guy, is it Rafael?
Yeah, Brandao.
Brando? Yeah, that dude. He's got such a beautiful physique. Like he does, like that. I really love the way that dude looks. He's probably one guy right now that, like, if I could say, oh, like someone I would want to look like or would like to look like, that's probably one guy that I would love to look exactly like.
Cool, man. All right. So the last thing I want to touch on, obviously, we all know that you're a dad and
Yep.
You're married. Jessica's your wife. So why don't you talk about fatherhood, talk about family, and kind of what all of that means to you, please?
Oh, dude, it's the best. I met my wife back in 2018. I couldn't think of anyone else who would be as supportive and everything as she is. Like she came into my life when I was already in powerlifting. She didn't know me when I was bodybuilding. So, one thing that, had kept me from kind of doing it, for a few years was just an unknown of if she would be okay with me going it back into bodybuilding, just because of, how much more time it does take than powerlifting does. There's a lot more that goes into it that, I was like, I don't know if you'll be okay with how much more time it's going to take, away from me being with you and, the kids and stuff. But she was 100% of, I'm tired of hearing you say you want to do it. It's like, just do it. We're going to be here. We're going to support you. If it's something you truly want to do, go for it. And she's been amazing. She's been such a huge help this entire prep of helping make meals or, anything that I've needed help with, to where you could think she could do. She's helped. Her support is huge. My kids are awesome. I got, a daughter, Fiona. She'll be 2 in January, and she's grown up like in the gym completely. Crawled for the first time in the gym. Has been around powerlifting meets, been around the top powerlifters in the world, and just cheers people on all the time at the gyms. It was kind of cool. She'll sit there and anytime she sees me watching videos of bodybuilders, or even if we're like at an event, she'll see people outside, she'll go, "Ooh, muscles!" And you can get her to show her muscles, which is really cool. She just tries to imitate, lifting and everything else. My other daughter's super supportive and stuff of it too. She's into it and likes it, and she's actually done a powerlifting meet before. I helped her with that, and it's just cool. The family is something that it means quite a lot to me. It's something I didn't think I'd have, a family like I do this early, but it's been great. I wouldn't trade anything for being a dad. It definitely changes your perspective on a lot of things and how you think about everything. And I think, it changes you definitely for the better.
Beautiful, man. All right, Ranson, we're going to wrap it up here. I want to give you kind of the final minute here or so, just to kind of share any final thoughts, any final words that you would have for myself and the listeners, and then any shout outs, any sponsors, anything of that nature. Also make sure you share your Instagram with us so that we can connect with you there. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So anyone who wants to, follow me, Instagram at Ranson Lee, RANSONLEE. I am a powerlifting coach. So I offer powerlifting coaching. offer bodybuilding programming as well, some basic nutrition stuff. So if anyone's looking for that, I do that. I have a couple different sponsors, Depth of Fortis Honor clothing company. Check them out. They've got a lot of really cool designs, always popping off. They've, helped me out quite a bit. Strong House Project, for someone who's looking for good knee wraps, wrist wraps, things like that. Strong House Projects has some really, really good products. And also Recovery CBD, really good CBD products from just the CBD oil, bath salts, you name it, they make it. A lot of good stuff from them. All this you can find, on my Instagram, of sponsors and so forth, and codes and everything that I have for them.
Cool, man. I thank you so much, Ranson, for chopping up with me and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. All right. Those of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you. I greatly appreciate you guys continuing to support the podcast, following on Instagram, subscribing on YouTube. If it wasn't for all of you, the podcast wouldn't exist. So thank you. Really quickly, before we wrap up this podcast episode with Ranson Lee, just a few things I would ask of all of you. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to the YouTube channel, Behind the Muscle, hit that subscribe button. That's really important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I distribute them to the other podcast platforms. So if you want to stay on top of all of the episodes that are coming out each week, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Also hit that like button on YouTube, and then go down into the comment section, and please just leave some feedback, leave a comment, your favorite takeaway from this episode, this conversation with Ranson. I love getting the feedback. I love getting the comments. It's always greatly appreciated. And then one final favor I'd ask of all of you, if you would take this specific episode and share it on your Instagram stories, make sure you tag Ranson and tag Behind the Muscle so that we know that you listen to this episode specifically and you found great value in it. That would be super cool. I greatly appreciate that. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.